Hello, welcome to episode 130 in this series where I'm programming an NES game tonight live on Twitch. So already had some questions going on here. I figured I'd start the recording. So on Tuesday, I got the character RAM seemingly working. I was able to modify it so that the tiles were updated according to Messin anyway, so that we could see some content in here at startup. The problem that we're having now is that the game is not running anymore since moving to Mapper 34 and changing the program size. And so to your question, Martin, the character RAM part isn't really the issue, I don't think. It's these 6 bytes here where the vector addresses should be. This should be 8000 or 8001, and yet it is not. When I reset the game, it is most definitely not. It is set to 0. And so I'm not sure why we're having that problem right now. I was looking at the code outside of the debug view to see if there were any clues, and you can see the ROM is going to this part here up to 95.2, and then it has this unidentified block. I noticed you were putting in a lot of B segments and thought you had failed to declare the structure properly in the header, but in your YouTube reply, well, I may very well be wrong. I don't know. I had been putting those B segments in because, so the way that I read the documentation, and this is the part where I'm saying it could be wrong. So you can have 128, maybe it's got to be 128K fixed. Maybe I'm not putting enough. That was the comment that you made. I was thinking, okay, I only want to start with 64 KB, but maybe you have to have 128, and that's what's messing up the organization. But the ROM size is limited to 32K, and so I'm not sure why that would be a problem. But now that I'm thinking about that, let's see. So if that's 64, so if I make this 8, that should be the 128K. Could not load. So it doesn't want to load it. I wonder if that's not right, because that's not 128K. Am I doing the math wrong? No, there are 16K segments. So again, I could be reading this wrong, but in the INES header, the program size, I believe, is defined as the number of 16K. Why can't I find what I'm looking for? It's defined in units of 16K, I think. Program data, 16K times X bytes. So just for the sake of argument, or my sanity rather, so it's 8 16K, which is what I have here. Yeah, and then, like you're saying, you could have code segments that are divided up into 32K blocks, which is what I thought I did in this configuration. My code A starts at 8000, and it's a size of 8000, which should be 32K. Yeah, it's 32K. I didn't update the comment. That's why I thought, yeah, no, I realized that. I didn't update the comment, and we can fix that. And then this should be 8K character RAM. It's calculating the mapper correctly, or it was reflecting the mapper correctly in the debug view that was showing. Oh, did Messin crash on me? I wonder if Messin doesn't like that I'm changing the ROM size and trying to just reload. Let me, oops, come on. No, don't send that to Microsoft. They don't care. Hey, Deedle. How's it going? So, yeah, it does not like... Hey, Banchiku. How's it going? I don't think CC65 has any issues with that mapper. I haven't heard anything about it. I know some of the other homebrewers like to use BNROM as a substitute for GT-ROM when they need to make a game ROM that's more compatible with the with emulators that might not support GT-ROM. Working on some level loading code. Cool. That's generally not too terrible, depending on how complex the loading algorithm is and if you're doing any compression or anything like that. So it doesn't like this. It doesn't like, or it seemingly doesn't like that. Let's take a closer look at the header and make sure I'm not missing anything here, because I feel like I could be very well missing something. So constant, I've got that. Size of program in 16K units. Okay. Char RAM, 0 means it's char RAM. Flags 6. Mapper, mirroring, battery, trainer. So I've got the mapper set okay. RAM size, which I'm not using. TV system not using. TV system program presence not using. Unused padding. So cartridge contains battery-backed program, or what? What was the rest of this? What does the rest of that say? Other persistent memory. Okay, 512 trainer, stored in 4. Ignore mirroring control. Lower nibble of battery-backed program or other persistent. I don't think that would count. Many mappers have mapper-controlled nametable mirroring. This will ignore bit 0. Several mappers have some sort of four-screen. Mappers that share four-screen nametable RAM with car RAM may interact. Okay. I don't see... Oh, wait. So this is potentially problematic. This does have bus conflicts. So flag 10 would need to be set, so 2, 0. Because it does, mapper 34 does have bus conflicts. But that still doesn't fix it. Let's make this smaller, just to see if that has any difference in behavior. Alright, so far nothing. What you doing? Okay, that's nothing. Often thought a setup like that would be useful for So no mirroring for name too. Let's go back to the standard mode here, and still have unidentified block. We don't have any. Interesting. I don't quite follow why these vectors aren't being loaded. That's the first thing I think we need to solve. The vector not being loaded, because the vector not being loaded is going to be a problem. So let's see something here. Reset B has a value of 8,000, which makes sense given that it is actually right at the beginning of that segment. It's almost like it's ignoring my vectors segment. There's vectors B, and that's ROM VB, which is starting at FFFA and is 6 bytes. The only thing, does this memory map actually, I don't remember if I tried this or not. Does this actually care if it's in the appropriate order? I mean, I don't know why it would, given that it sort of defeats the purpose of then telling it where things start and exist, but yeah, it didn't seem to make any difference. Okay, that's what I thought from last time, but this mapper does not have a fixed bank. The whole 32K, whole 32K is one bank. Vectors are specific to the NES, so the offset doesn't change. That's right. No, I know they're supposed to be in the same place. The thing that I don't seem to understand about the way this configuration file works. This should be read-only, shouldn't it? The thing that I don't understand about the way that this is working right now is that it seems to be ignoring my definition of the vectors. Like I have in my code here that these are there's this segment for vectors B, which has reset B here. What I really should be doing is one of the things is that there are bus conflicts with mapper 34, and so you need to, according to the documentation I was reading, if you're trying to switch to a particular bank, you have to make sure that the value you're writing to the register reflects a value that's on the ROM. Basically, that you have to hard code the places that you're going to write to for the specific banks that you want, because otherwise the ROM may not override. The ROM value going to the register in the mapper may override the value written by the code, so they have to be the same. So that would just be something like this at the beginning of each segment, assuming that I'm going to write the value 0 at 8,000 regardless of the bank that I'm in. But we're not even getting that far, because right now it still doesn't have value. And I really wish I could figure out why. Code A is here, and it just continues on and on and on and on until we get to our vectors segment here. What if I say we just have one 32K bank? Will that even work? No. There's, you know, the other thing that might be useful, besides me not closing all my windows here. Do I have Shiru's tool for, what is it called? There's a ROM size tool. That might give me a clue as to how this is being divided up. It's possible. Let's go download that, because I thought I had that, but this tool is useful for if you want to see how much space you have left on your in your banks. But in this case, I want to see what it thinks we actually have in terms of what banks we have. I don't care how full it thinks they are, because at this point that's kind of irrelevant. Let's close that, and let's see if I drag the ROM into here. Let's see what it thinks it's doing. So it thinks there are two mapper 34, 2 times prog, 0 times char, empty is 0. I think Deadly Towers is one of the games that uses this mapper. It's mapper 34. Why is it saying 16K free? See, that seems wrong to me. That seems like the mapper is behaving differently than what's described. .34 program size 128. Is it because it just automatically divides it up into 16 all the time? If my memory is good, there was some discussion on NES Dev regarding using a mapper with 32K banks with CC65, and it seems quite a pain compared to MMC3. You know, let's do a quick search for that. You might be onto something. C65 32 KB bank. So compile, assemble, and link each bank separately, then concatenate them together at the end. Each bank will have its own runtime library and code segments. But this is it because it's all in one file? It doesn't like that? You'll have to compile and link them separately, but make sure to include all object files and all builds. Even though you're generating one bank at a time, the linker needs to know the contents of every bank to do it. For example above, you'll have 2 linker configs. Run the linker with each of these configs. Alternatively, you can reserve empty space in each other banks for the runtime library link. Copy. Might be more painful. My preferred method is just keep C code in the first bank. So each bank will have a fixed location, an array of pointers to each shared function. Well, but this is... This is getting to the... I mean, I feel like I'm not even here yet. This is talking about how if you want to reference something... if you want to reference something that's in one of the other banks, you can't. You have to duplicate your code across the banks. But we're not even at that part yet, I don't think. Right? Because we're not even at a point where it even understands the vectors properly. I think is more the part that you have to compile all banks manually or something like that. I mean, we could try doing that. I can split because it's mostly the second bank has nothing really in it, so I can do this. This is no longer really necessary. New. Save as shooter bank 2.asm. And then where's my make file? And then symbol reset is undefined. I actually don't care about this. Let's just do this. Jump back to reset B. Alright, so that linked. I'm not sure how much you can automate it like MMC3 with a config script to make sure everything is fine on all banks. That would be my concern. Let's do this also in here. Let's see if that changed anything here. Okay, so now it knows. That looks better because it picked up that there's this code here in the second bank. You can see there's just a little bit of code in there. Let's reset Messen and see what it does. This looks like the second bank maybe. No, it's the first one. Memory. CPU memory. PPU memory. Program. I mean, we look at 8,000 here. This is oh, it's not totally empty. What do we have here? 8,000. We have 0, and then we have A9. Show my instructions, please. A8. So 4.8. So okay. So this is not. You can force a bank switch in Messen by selecting some code. Right-click to edit selected code and type in the bank switch code and. So like that, Deedle? So, I mean, I think... The thing is, I think it's already in the second bank. What I think the problem is... Oh, wait a minute, what am I saying? Well, yeah, I mean... Doesn't seem to... Did it do anything? Is that saying it's bank 1? Oh, it is saying it's bank 1. Okay, so that tells you what bank it's looking at. So, that's the other thing. Are the banks... Well, if the character... If the bank size is 32K... Select 32K program banks. But is it increment? Is it? 0 should be the first 32, and 1 should be the second. Yeah, that's what I thought. And it looks like if I look at the ROM here, this is clearly the second bank, right? Because it's got the 0, and then it's got these instructions here, and then everything else is 0. But then it's missing the vector, which is the problem because it's not jumping to the code that's forcing it to go to bank 0. Is there a way to hand code makes the compile time? So if I'm looking at this, are we saying that is the other thing that you can't have two overlapping? Is that really what it is? Like I can't do... I wonder... That's kind of crazy if that's... Let's try this. We'll say NES2. And what we'll do is NES2... get rid of this and get rid of that, and we don't need these B areas, and this is just code. I'm going to do the same thing here. I think I'm beginning to understand what you meant when you said that it's a little bit problematic. So we have just our vectors in our code, and this is for 2 different files. And then we have this one, which is just code and vectors. And it's just code and vectors. And then, where's the make file? Let's see here. Select the target system. There's a way to target system. So this would be NES, and this would be NES2. And then He only works if the config files are in the default CC folder for platforms. Oh, -C? Okay. How come I don't see... Oh, okay. I missed that. I thought there was a way to do it by file, but I was getting a little nervous here, so... Okay. Unknown option. Capital C. That only works for the linker? It's interesting. So actually, you know what? They're called the same things. I guess I don't really even need a second file technically. Segment vectors overflows memory area ROM V by 6 bytes. ROM V. Get rid of this. Which file is that? That's what the two. So the overlap is a problem now. They're too big. Okay. Fair enough. Wrong number system. 7 FFA, okay. We can give that a shot. Code ROM. Am I in the wrong file? I don't think so. Let's type NES. Where's my config? Let me get rid of this one. It's segment vectors overflows memory area ROM V by 6 bytes. What am I missing? ROM V starts at FFFA and it's 6 bytes. Okay. Code is ROM 0, vectors is ROM V. Is it because I have the header for the second one? Because the header doesn't need to be in the second bank. Let me rebuild the second bank with that changed for a moment and see if that makes a difference. No, it's still overflowing it. I think it's because it's defining it as two things that are the same, essentially. The header isn't in the address space, so it shouldn't interfere with any of this. Okay. Figured it was worth testing just to make sure. seems as though on the linking, is where we're having the problem. Is there debug info being generated here? It's probably in the object file. This is okay. So you only need to declare the vectors once. Well, the problem is, I mean, yes, that might fix the problem, but I need the vectors to be defined in both banks, because depending on how their mapper initializes, we may or may not actually run, right? Because the vector has to be available in both bits of code, and depending on which mapper you're in, it will launch you into the game code appropriately, or it's supposed to. But that doesn't seem to be happening right now. Let me look at the memory. But you only have one code spec. Yeah. I know there's only one code segment declared, but that's just defining where this code lives and in the memory space. It's saying, okay, you've got this memory, you've got this code, and it starts at 8,000, and you have this much space for it, and so that all the address offsets are correct. Do the vectors have to be yet another file? No, because that would be a problem. Because you need it in both banks. Get rid of this for a second. Dito, can you explain what you mean relieving the overlap problem? I mean, yeah, it may not complain anymore about the fact that we overflow by 6 bytes because we removed the vector definition from one of the files. But I thought the whole point was the way that you're generating this code, because they're two different banks, they shouldn't. Let's go back to this thread here, because something is and have all imported functions properly written to the current segment. An example. Let's compile to the functions. The bank is no. The swapping has nothing to do with. Swapping has nothing to do with the size. I mean, you got to think about it like it were a real ROM chip, right? Like the size is fixed. So just because the size that we're defining is only 7 FFA, that doesn't make the ROM any smaller, right? The actual fixed size of the ROM is either two 16K sizes or one 32K. So all we're doing is we're saying we can't write code that goes past that size limit so that our vectors have the 6 bytes to expand into. How many vector segments do you... I have 2 vector segments. I have one in the main file here, which is for this bank, and then I have one in the second file for the second bank. Is it possible you define... You can post a link, sure. Okay. Right, so all of your banks start at the same address and they have a fixed size. Only mention vectors in the segments. Vectors in the segments. Vectors here, bank 3F. Interesting. I mean, the thing... Okay, so the reason that I did it this way was if you look at the stock NES thing here, they define the vectors in this spot here, and then you just have vectors reference this. But Banjiku, well, okay. I mean, I can try that. So then do I need multiple? I feel like I do, based on what you're saying here. And I have to have the multiple banks, and then I have to have load data banks. .303. Interesting. Yeah, the stock NES one is a little wonky and really only... Yeah, no, I know the stock one is not great. Since both vectors will combine into one... Okay, I mean, that makes sense to me. So what we're saying here is we want to have... Doing it in the sort of similar way that I've been doing it here, we could say, forgetting about the other... The actual code issue right now, we have ROM-V and ROM-V2 and vectors 2. And I can do this, and then we're saying, okay, so that'll make the problem go away. Okay, it does. I have a ton of data banks because we're filling out the 512. Okay. But the thing is that even if that makes that problem on the linking go away, doesn't seem to impact what gets generated here. Go back to this for a second, reload. So what is that? Because, oh, you know what? Okay, so let's go back. We got to fix the code segments now too. Go back to the way that I was doing this here. Code 2. And this is code 2. And then no difference. Oh, stop asking me to be consistent, Martin. Come on. You're right. I should be more consistent about that. Multiple memory and multiple segments. For each ROM X, you need a code. Okay. I will try it because I really don't know what the situation is here. So let's fix my inconsistencies here. We'll just stick with everything being labeled 1 and 2, and then this is ROM 0. Let's say, oh, should we do 0 index? Let's do 0 index. Let's be really nerdy about this. So ROM 0, ROM 1, ROM V0, ROM V1. And so this is going to be code 1, and it's going to be vectors 1, and then this is going to be vectors 0, and this is going to be code 0. I didn't try it with only one bank, but I believe it wasn't working because of the same problem, that the vectors were not being set properly. It looks like that is showing something a little more promising here. Let's go back to, okay. It looks like you guys might have been right about that. So now the question is, if we look at our code, where did it jump to? I don't know why it jumped over there, but that's interesting. So that definitely fixed the vector. That actually has a value in there. But you know what? Let's see. It's showing we're in bank 0, but now we're in bank 1, or this is showing bank 1, because the address is 8000, which is what or 8001, I should say, which is correct because this is 0, the 0 byte that I wrote here. And this vector, so messin, all right, so we're getting somewhere here. Let's getting somewhere here. Is this actually executing this code right now? That doesn't seem right. Saying this is where the reset pointed it to. Load xbd and then break. Whoa. You don't specify bank 0 as the starting one. You write that it could be either bank, and then your code handles the initialization properly on reset. So if you're in bank 1, it should go and force you back into bank 0. And if you're in bank 1, it should just run the game. Or sorry, I said that wrong. If you're in bank 1, it should force the bank to 0 and reset and start the game. And if you're in bank 0, it should just start the game. And at the beginning of the code segment here, I've got a 0 byte. Because it should be, I mean, this is the right vector, as far as I can tell. Or actually, is it? 836D. 836D, what is that? That's where it's supposed to be going. So it's actually not right. It's actually the vector, it's stacking the vectors one after another. This is the first vector. And then this is the second vector. Don't you want 0, 1 at the end of the second bank? $0.01 at the start of the second bank. I'm not sure I follow. This is the first bank, isn't it? Which has all the code in it. They're stacking because you have the declarations next to each other. Oh, really? In the configuration? Is that... in the memory section. So I have ROM 0, ROM V. Oh, what did I do? That's the, okay, that's the stock one, sorry. ROM 0, V0. I didn't realize, okay, so I thought that didn't matter, but let's, you're probably right. So that's actually, that literally is the layout of, oh yeah, look at that. So that's literally the layout of, huh. That's crazy. Okay. So that's literally the layout of the ROM that gets written to the file. Okay, that makes sense. I mean, that makes sense. I just didn't realize that it actually cared about the order like that. You wrote byte 0 at the start of both banks. Well, yeah, both banks should be going to bank 0, should they not? Like at the beginning. Oh, is it because if I want to switch banks, I need to be able to write 1 somewhere else? Is that what you're getting at? Well, no, bank 1... Aren't the banks 0 indexed? I mean, this is right. This is the beginning of the game code here. And I want to be in bank 0 because if I go to bank 1, the vector resets the NES. So should go back to load a 0, store, sorry, 1, store a 8000. I mean, I don't think this is going to actually work because of the bus conflict, but okay, it did. So if we go, yeah, see, and here, this is bank 1. So if we're in bank 1, the vector, wherever that is, further down at the bottom, is going to call reset B, and we're going to load 0 and store it into 8000, which has the value 0, which we need to have 0 for the bus conflict, right? And then it's going to jump back to, in this case it's jumping back to reset B, but that's technically not right. Yeah, I just literally want to get the game started, because right now, or up until this point, it wasn't even running the game code properly because it kept, because the code was all misaligned or something. Well, it was a combination of things, I shouldn't say or something, right? The problems were that the code was all in one file for both banks. That apparently is no good. And then the other part is that my sort of intuition that this had to be in the actual order that it should appear was also correct. Although at first I didn't realize that it was actually doing anything, but then you pointed out, Deedle, that it does actually matter. And so what we're getting at here is now we've got the ROM 0 is actually in bank 0, and we've got the vector at the end, and then we've got ROM 1, which is the first bank, and that's our vector 1. And so what I wanted it to do was what it did. I mean, it loaded the game properly, so that we have our reset code running here. If we go back to this, it's actually trying to load the title screen now, but the tiles aren't loaded because of the character RAM. So that part is right. What we would want to do if we want to switch banks is we need to be able to, somewhere in here, probably would want to do something like this. Could do this in both of them, right? So that we have a place to swap banks. Well, what you missed in the last 10 minutes, Bonchaku, is it is actually now trying to load the title screen. That blinking is the fact that it's missing the tiles. So that worked. But Deedle, I guess I'm just... Oh, okay, you agreed. You said it's only for later when you want to deal with bank 1. Okay, all right, cool. So we're all on the same page here. Thank you for your help on that. I think eventually would have stumbled into a solution, but I appreciate that. Your explanation made more sense than my stumbling. So now the next thing I want to do, I think, is I want to... Where's reset? I want to make this called game reset. I want to put... reset here, and I want this to jump to game reset. And the reason I want to do that is I want to make that map to what's in here, and then if I jump to reset B after swapping the banks... Oh, actually, no, that won't work, right? Because you immediately swap the banks, and then you're into whatever byte that is in here, which would be draw status bar, which is not even used. So what we would want to do, this is the part where I guess you would need to load a location of memory with the jump to the address that you want, and then do the bank switch, and then, well, no, because then your code is... So I guess you would essentially want to do something... This is interesting. So you'd want to do the same thing here, right? I don't know if I want a no-op or what, but for the game, for the reset, when it's called... I guess I don't need to actually do that. I just need this to match, essentially. And then this would never really get called, right? Because as soon as you hit the register with the bank, it would swap over to here, and it would execute the next instruction, which would be the jump. if I'm doing that right. When you get around to switching to the second bank, be sure to write to 8001. Yeah, yep. Right, because the 8001 has the value 1 in it, and that would be the that would fix the bus conflict to address, yeah, the second bank. Maybe that's not possible after all, since the reset code would be different location in every bank. So well, it hasn't beneath the label right, so you still have reset 0, reset. Well, yeah, so the resets need to be there to handle, you know, if I have, what is it, they're 32K, there's 4 banks, is that right? 32, yeah, so if there are 4 banks, if we actually use all 4, we would have to write resets that look exactly like this to get us back into bank 0 and then jump us to game reset to actually start the code, right? Because, and we need to increase the number of bytes here to address all those other banks appropriately. So we'd have byte 0, byte 1, byte 2, byte 3 for all the different banks, and we'd mirror that across all the different files. The weird thing about this, and I hadn't really thought about this that carefully up until we started getting into this just now, and with the help that you guys were providing, is thinking about how you have to kind of bounce around to the different banks. And now some of the code that I've seen out there, and why and how they work with you know, the different techniques that they use for jumping between the banks and the functions in the banks makes more sense to me. The complexity of, you know, taking the code, loading yourself into a location that's not on the ROM, then swapping the ROM and then jumping back to where you need to actually go. I may really want to do something that has a fixed bank for this. You could use includes for the shared code as long as you include it. Yeah, so as long as they're all positioned in the same spot in the address space, yeah, you could use the same include file, and that would save you from having to replicate that code across the board. But let's wow. Okay, so if we reset this, we should still have the same results here. All right, cool. So we're back in business as far as that goes, and then that all looks normal. All right, let's go back to, oh, is this actually still included? Okay. How much space does that take up? I'm just curious. We need it. No, it's a decent amount of space. All right. Game state would persist from bank to bank, as would the ship. Well, yeah, that's all in the RAM, right? That doesn't change. It's the content of the code that's addressable that changes as you swap your banks. So, all right, let's start by trying to load the background tiles in. But the code to read that value, update the value, would be the same. Yeah, it would be the same. That raises an interesting question. Like, I have these variables. So if I said load A, game state, it probably has no idea what that is. Symbol game state is undefined. So that's going to be, I assume, do you have to replicate the 0-page definition in each file also? I mean, here we can even try that and see. System RAM isn't enumerated relative to the bank you're in. Oh. All my types and stuff. Segment 0-page, so it system RAM isn't enumerated relative to any bank you're in. Well, it's not that they need to be duplicated, it's the definitions of where the variables reside seem not to carry over. And maybe that just needs to be something that is fixed in linking, but I'm not sure. Like in C, you'd have externs, you know, and then when you linked, it would either get resolved or not. You need to define them externally and import them at the right place. Yeah, it's possible that they don't need to be in separate files. That whole thing may have just been a red herring. Here, let's see. Well, it didn't complain about it. Let's. That looks normal. Code loaded. Okay, well, that at least sort of resolves the problem because it is all in the same file again. Okay. Good call, Deedle. So let's go back to this and let's get rid of all these extra files that we've created because these are apparently not required. And change the make file to get rid of that. Hey, and you know, I never claimed to be an expert on this. I'm just kind of learning and working on it and sharing the experience. So hopefully somebody gets something out of watching me try and figure this out with your guys' help this time. Okay, cool. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it was the overlap and ordering problem. Yeah, I mean, the good thing about doing this, despite all the sort of frustration with the way that these things were kind of coming together, is that I'm at least learning how this configuration file is supposed to work, because even up until this point, it was a little vague on why it worked the way it did exactly, and that helped clear that up, I think, a lot more. So now we should be able to load the RAM with our character tiles. So let's do that. So this was our sort of bogus loading code here. I'm not sure even those who designed and built the console learned from Maverick game designers who did crazy things. All right, so we need to get the address that we are reading from. Where is that? This is actually just now I'm going to probably mess this up, but that's okay. I don't have any other. I think I have something called temp pointer. Yep. Let's just make sure that this is even gonna assemble. Is this it? I knew it was something like that. Where is that code? So A is B1, so then temp pointer 90. So 90B1. Let's go to the memory. And that is looking like the beginning of our character ROM. What did I call that? Shooter char. Oh, this is a whole mess of all the different things. Okay. Let's just start with some basic stuff here. So load Y0, load X. So each of these tiles is, what, 16 bytes? How many cycles does it take to populate the character RAM? I have no idea. We can check. with zeros 3 cycles times 8192. Let's see, so there are 256 tiles times 16 bytes per tile, right? So it's 4K of tiles that I want to load. You know, I'd be just happy with seeing it load some of the tiles now. So let's just sort of test this out. So load a temp pointer Y, store A into 2007, increment X, and then branch if not equal back to here. Actually compare X to 0, branch not equal to there. Let's just have that load up some tiles. I don't actually care that it's not all of them yet. Let's just get it to do some of this stuff. Because right now, we're just purely sort of experimenting with this. It does look like it's loading something in there. All right, so did I reverse the pointer definition load thingy? Because I do that all the time. Temp pointer says 9DC1, so is it really C1D9? That looks like that's all 0. So 9DC1. That looks like it's probably tile data. Oh, the parentheses. You're right. You're right. Thank you. Totally forgot about the parentheses. I was so focused on whether or not I wanted to load all the tiles or some of the tiles. Hey, hey! We're sort of back in business. We've got some of that stuff actually loading here. Let's see if we can get a real title screen. So, let me think about this. If we want to load 4K of data, well, I mean, I could always unroll the loop. I mean, you could literally do, this with a repeat of 4096, right? Because you're just loading the one byte at a time. Oh, well, no, you can't, because the Y will overflow. That won't work. But you could do it similar to the way that we're doing some of the memory clear stuff, where we do it in sort of segmented loops. We could work with. Let me go to this for a second. The other thing we could do is just change the value of temp pointer instead of the Y. 9DC1. Where's temp pointer defined? That's at AA. C190. So we could, instead of doing this, we could branch carry clear. Branch carry clear there, otherwise we want to increment temp pointer +1. We should probably check, well, it can't overflow, it would be a problem. Okay, and then yep, and then basically we just need to know once we've hit the end instead of the X part here. So I guess we would need a second pointer. We do have one, so store a sprite pointer. No, what is it called? MD pointer, yeah. And then load a entity pointer, clear the carry. Actually, we don't have to do that to the bottom one. We just got to do it to the top one. Clear carry. So what is that? So 4K is 2000 hex. 1000 hex. Okay. Sorry. We just literally do this, and then we compare the 2 bytes. Is add carry 0 slower than a branch carry clear? I don't know. Add carry with an immediate is 2. Branch carry clear, where are the number of cycles? Is it just 2 for this too? 3 cycles. No, that's BVC. All branches have a length of 2 bytes. See the notes for displacement. Code. 2 machine cycles. Should admin tells be at the top of the character RAM speed. I honestly am not even there yet, Martin, with the placement of the tiles. I'm just trying to understand how the character RAM works and how this would play out. So, back to your question, Deedle. Add carry 0 slower than a branch carry clear. No, they're both 2 cycles, right? Add carry clear is 2 cycles. Branch carry clear is 2 cycles. So they're the same. If I'm understanding the question. So we're here, and then what I want to do is I want to load temp pointer, compare it to entity pointer, branch if not equal, up to there, and then temp pointer +1, compare entity pointer +1. Branch not equal to this, otherwise jump to Done loading tiles. This is just jump load tile loop. Don't forget to store a temp pointer after your ADC. After your ADC01. Yes, thank you. I have done that too many times. So thank you for catching that one. 473. Yep, that would help. Alright, so there's a bug somewhere. Oh, wait a minute. You know what I didn't do? I got so caught up in all the rest of the stuff. I incremented that, but did I get that wrong? Let's double check. So entity pointer is store a, load a. Damn it. So 9 EDD, that's 9, right, because I incremented, okay, so did that, we're getting the same result. Okay, so add carry 1, store into temp pointer, branch carry clear. Load a temp pointer compared to empty pointer branch if not equal to there. So jump load tile loop. Then if it's equal, load temp pointer compared to entity pointer plus 1. Temp pointer plus 1 entity pointer branch if not equal to there. Done loading tiles. Load A, clear carry, add 1, store, temp pointer. Go back to this for a second. Did I miscalculate my... That's 4K. Maybe it's... Well, 8K would be the whole thing. So if I incremented this twice, that would load the entire old character ROM, or it should, into the PPU. But it's not. Why? It's closer. Might be down to something in the character ROM. It's not right, but I don't see how that would be possible because it was just directly including that. And close some of these windows. It's probably more likely a bug in the way I'm doing this. So load y as 0. I'm not incrementing y here anywhere, right? I'm just using that as 0. Let me just make sure that that's actually the right address stuff that I'm incrementing. So entity pointer is 9ddf. 9EDF. temp pointer is 9DDF. That's weird. Why 9DDF, 9FDF? Yeah, no, that's right, because it incremented. So you want to add 10 instead of ink. Oh, right. Yes, thank you, you're right. Right, because I'm not adding 100 hex, I'm trying to add 1000 hex. Yes. And carry. Sorry. Or actually, really, yeah. Yep. You're good. You're good, Deedle. Cool. Alright, so our tiles are now correct. Our ROM, sorry, our sprites are wrong, but that's okay because that should just be now that. And that would load the whole rest of everything, in theory. Hey, alright. So now we're back to where we were, except that we have attribute problems. Why? Oh, because of the mirroring. No, it's not because of the mirror. Why? Shouldn't matter. Did this offset something? This mapper uses fixed hardware controlled mirroring. Full time. I wish I could do it full time. Everything else seems right, but it's weird, the way that that's being handled is different than it was with MMC3. I know MMC3 can swap, but I thought I was. So let me see. So oh, you know what though? You might be right in the sense that because it can swap, I was setting it to a different type of mirroring, horizontal mirroring, and it is, yeah, it's using vertical here. So yes, you are correct that is in fact creating the issue we're seeing here, I think, because of that swap. So bit 0. So it should just go to 0 like that, and then this is making me nervous because I don't want to have to deal with attributes again for a while if I can avoid it, because boy were they ever the bane of my existence. Yeah, that's much better. Okay. No, I was expecting horizontal mirroring, but because I was using MMC3 before, I was setting it in the register and I hadn't changed it in the header because it didn't matter for MMC3, but then it created that weird problem with the inconsistency there. And the scrolling is designed to work with horizontal mirroring. All right, so that is awesome. So now, after all that, we're back at where we were. And then the question becomes, can I take I'm going to wrap here in a minute because I promised my wife I would not go later than 10:30, and it's 10:40. She's going to be a little upset. So now the question is, now that we have that, how difficult or easy will it be to get this? So loading the tiles won't be difficult, but the animation, and the whole reason we kind of went down this road was because right now the animation is accomplished by bank switching this last bank, but all of these tiles, with the exception of these here, are the same. So I was thinking, well, if we have character RAM, we know where those tiles need to live, so I can just keep updating them to perform the animation. It's not that many tiles. So we'll play around with that and see. I mean, I could be totally wrong, but part of this is just to learn how all of this is working. So while it's slowing progress in the game itself, it's this has been a huge help for me to understand better how these mappers work, both with the organization in CC65 and also using the, dealing with the bus priorities and stuff like that. So am I right in thinking you can't use a tile from the background character RAM as a sprite for the dark blue parts of the sparkles? You should be able to update around 15 character tiles worth of data in the vBlank. So Martin, your question about the background character RAM as a sprite, am I right in thinking you can't use a tile from the background? Well, you can if you say that the sprites begin, I mean, this is, if you look here, this is all the same, because it's starting at the same, is it starting at the same address? It looks like it's starting at the same address. PPU 1000, or is that just, no, it's at PPU 0. It could just be that that's how it got dumped out into the ROM, that it was just mirrored to fill in the space here. I don't know. I mean, if you changed, there's a flag, right? There's a flag to say where the sprites pull their data from, or their tiles from, either at 0 or at 1000. So oh, that's what the character address is, isn't it? Or maybe not. Maybe that's the banked address. I'm not sure. But there is a way to do that. So you could have the sprites change in the same way that the backgrounds do, I believe. If you want to get fancy, you can update only the pixels that change, which is less than a full. Yeah, that's true. You'd have to know which pixels, but then you're just updating those individual bytes. Another option is to preload all the tiles you want to use and update the name table to animate. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's why we went down this road in the first place, was to kind of understand how we could do this, because as I mentioned in the last one, I really like the way this title screen looks with the animation, and when you look at the full thing in ASprite, it does require a little bit more than just what the what the background layer is showing there with the sprite layer. Get rid of the menu here. So there's a little bit to figure out here to make this work, but you know, if I can get this to work this way. Part of the appeal of using the character RAM is that then when we go into level 1, I just dump out all of the tiles for this title screen animation, and everything is offset in a fixed way for level 1. Since, you know, we're not as constrained by the program sizes today as you were when the NES was actually current. So if we wanted to use a lot of program to store off the tiles and then load it into the RAM, we can do that. So I don't know. Again, this is all just kind of experimenting here in these last couple of sessions, and we'll keep doing that as we try and work on the title screen. But I'm going to wrap up here. So thanks for watching, as always, and if you want to reach out to me on Twitter, I'm at Clairvis, I'm on Nintendo Age Azelius, and I'll post this recording on YouTube. If you're watching it there, feel free to comment below. And just like all the other YouTube people say, like and subscribe. Thank you for the stream. Thank you for the help, Deedle. Definitely appreciate it. You saved me a couple of times there from making the same mistakes I typically make when I'm trying to talk and code at the same time here. Yeah, and I'll see you guys on Monday. And thanks, Deedle. Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Banjaku. And have a great night. And I will see you next time. Take care.